I was supposed to be a married man today. Instead of smiling next to the woman I thought was the love of my life, I am sitting alone, staring at a half-empty cup of coffee, writing the story of how everything fell apart. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't bad timing. It was betrayal, the kind that crawls under your skin and lives there, cold and unrelenting. Her name is Brianna. She's 29, lively and radiant, the kind of woman who makes people smile just by walking into a room. I'm 37, a quiet and reserved man who finds comfort in predictable routines: reading, coding, working, going home. We had been together for almost 2 years when I proposed to her. She cried tears of joy that night, holding my hand as if the world could collapse around us and she would still feel safe. We planned to marry exactly 1 month after my proposal. It was my idea at first. I didn't want a huge, over-the-top wedding. A small, elegant ceremony with our closest family and friends would have been perfect for me. But Brianna had a vision, one she painted so vividly that I could almost see it. A classic ballroom. Ivory flowers cascading down crystal pillars, fairy lights, music, dancing, laughter. She wanted magic. And because I loved her, I said yes. She handled every detail of the planning. I gave her my credit card and told her to do whatever made her happy. She hired a professional planner named Mira, who had an impeccable portfolio. Brianna wanted 3 months to bring her dream wedding to life, and even though I had initially imagined something faster and simpler, I agreed. Love makes you flexible like that. The weeks went by quickly. I threw myself into work so I could clear my schedule before our honeymoon. We were supposed to spend a week in Paris, strolling by the river, eating pastries, laughing at my terrible French. Brianna often updated me on the preparations, and I trusted her completely. There was never a single reason to doubt her, until the day everything cracked. 2 weeks before the wedding, unexpected heavy rains forced the outdoor venue to cancel. Brianna quickly found an alternative, a luxurious 5-star hotel with a stunning banquet hall. She asked me to take a few hours off work to sign the contract and drop off the deposit check. I picked her up that afternoon, still half distracted by work, and we drove to the hotel together. Mira was there, her leg in a cast. She'd been in an accident a few weeks earlier, so her stepbrother, Aaron, had been helping her with the preparations. He was there too, tall, charming, and the kind of man who fills a room with ease. I didn't think much of it at the time. The 4 of us waited in the lobby for the banquet manager, a kind middle-aged woman who greeted Brianna warmly the moment she arrived. "You must be the bride," she said, her eyes lighting up. "Your face says it all. You're glowing." Brianna blushed, and I smiled at the compliment. But then everything went sideways. The manager turned to Aaron and with a knowing grin said, "You're a lucky man to have such a beautiful fiancée. No wonder you couldn't keep your hands off her the other day." The air thickened instantly. Brianna froze, her smile faltering. Aaron looked like someone had punched the breath out of him. And me? My heart started hammering like a drum. The manager continued, clearly misreading the situation. "It's fine," she laughed. "I see couples like you two all the time. Elevator kisses, hallway hugs. Love is beautiful." I stood up without saying a word. It wasn't just the words she said. It was the ease, the casual certainty in her tone. She wasn't guessing. She believed what she was saying. I walked out, Brianna chasing after me, her heels echoing down the marble hallway. I reached the elevator first, stepped in, and closed the doors before she could get in. My drive back to the office was a blur of shaking hands and shallow breaths. My phone rang nonstop. She called. She texted. I didn't answer. I sat behind my desk, canceled all my meetings, and stared at the wall. Later that night, she left me dozens of voicemails insisting it was a misunderstanding. She said the manager must have confused her with someone else. She begged me to meet with the woman again to clear things up. I didn't want to, but Mira eventually called too, apologizing for the uncomfortable moment and suggesting I at least hear the woman out. So the next day, I returned to the hotel. The banquet manager looked nervous. She apologized immediately, claiming she must have mixed up Brianna with another bride and Aaron with another groom. "It's a busy place," she said. "Sometimes faces blur together." But she was lying. I could see it in the way her hands fidgeted with the edge of her folder, the way her eyes wouldn't quite meet mine. I asked if she could show me the elevator security footage. She paled and mumbled something about company policy. That's when it clicked. She was scared. Not of me, but of losing her job. She admitted, with hesitation, that Brianna had begged her to cover up what she saw, threatening to report her for unprofessional gossip if she didn't. That was it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply picked up my phone, called Mira in front of her, and canceled the venue booking. When I walked out of the hotel, I left behind not just a deposit, but the entire illusion of the life I thought I was building. That night, the banquet manager called me again. Her voice trembled as she told me everything. She had seen Brianna and Aaron making out in the elevator during one of their earlier site visits. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a case of mistaken identity. She hadn't told me earlier because Brianna had cornered her and made her promise to lie. But guilt got the better of her. I sat in silence for a long time after the call ended. I thought about Brianna's smile, the way she looked at me when I proposed, the messages she had sent me just days earlier, telling me how excited she was to be my wife. How could someone be so cruel? Not just to cheat, but to plan an entire wedding while doing it. I didn't tell my family immediately. I couldn't. I felt humiliated, hollowed out. I moved out of our shared apartment that night and stayed at my office for a week, ignoring calls from friends and relatives who were confused about the sudden cancellation. Brianna told people it was just a big misunderstanding. I let her. I didn't have the energy to defend myself. I buried myself in work. I sent out a formal cancellation notice through the wedding planner. I refunded what I could, lost a chunk of money, but I didn't care. Money can be earned back. Trust cannot. Brianna kept texting me, sending selfies, begging me to talk. But what was there to say? The image of her with him in that elevator was burned into my brain. I could see it every time I closed my eyes. A week later, she showed up at my door. I almost didn't open it, but my anger had dulled into a strange, quiet ache. I let her in, but I didn't let her touch me. She stood there, eyes red, hands shaking, and said, "I'm here to confess." Her words came out in a broken stream. She told me everything. How she'd been spending more time with Aaron after Mira's accident. How he had charmed her, complimented her, made her feel beautiful. How one day, after a dress fitting, they ended up alone in the hotel elevator and she let him kiss her. It wasn't just once. It wasn't just a kiss. They met there multiple times. She admitted to staying overnight with him in that same hotel while telling me she was with the planner going over floral arrangements. I walked out of my own house as she cried on my living room floor. "I don't know what happened," she said. "I didn't plan it. I just felt desired." Her explanation made me sick. If a few flattering compliments were enough to make her betray me, what would happen 5 years into marriage when life became routine? When I worked late nights? When someone else said the right words? I told her no. No to forgiveness. No to second chances. No to pretending this could ever be fixed. She cried harder. I packed her things into boxes, left them in the garage, and locked the door behind her. The weeks that followed were a strange mixture of pain and relief. Pain, because betrayal stings like fire. Relief, because I had escaped a marriage built on a lie. My family found out eventually. My mother, who had always adored Brianna, cried when I told her. My siblings were furious. Her family at first believed her version of the story, until the hotel manager backed me up. When they learned the truth, they called to apologize. I accepted it. I didn't hate them. I just couldn't be part of that world anymore. I unblocked Brianna eventually, not because I wanted her back, but because I didn't want to live in bitterness. She texted me once after that, saying she understood now and wouldn't disturb me again. That was the first honest thing she'd said in months. Before all of this, I thought I understood heartbreak. I'd had breakups. I'd lost people. But betrayal by someone you trusted with your future is a wound that cuts differently. It doesn't bleed on the outside. It festers quietly, whispering doubts into your mind long after the person is gone. I've realized since then that I wasn't perfect either. I had my flaws. I'm not romantic. I get lost in work. I don't always say how I feel. But love isn't supposed to crumble just because someone else says prettier words. It's supposed to be built on something stronger than flattery. I started therapy a few weeks later, not for Brianna, but for me. I wanted to understand why I gave so much of myself to someone who clearly didn't deserve it. I wanted to learn how to trust again, not just others, but my own instincts. People often say betrayal changes you. They're right. It doesn't turn you bitter overnight, but it does make you quieter, more observant. You start looking at smiles differently, noticing the spaces between words, the things people don't say. But I refuse to let it turn me into someone who can't love again. I canceled the Paris honeymoon, of course. The insurance covered most of it, except for the last-minute flight cancellation. I didn't mind losing the money. I had already lost something much more valuable. Today should have been our wedding day. Instead of standing at an altar, I spent the morning walking through a park alone. I watched other couples laughing, holding hands, whispering secrets. It hurt a little, but it also reminded me that love is still out there, just not with her. Brianna will always be a chapter in my life, but she won't be the ending. Some stories end with happily ever after. Mine ended with the truth. And sometimes that's the better ending.